So let's be honest. Procrastination sucks, especially when you're a student. It feels like you just want to get the thing done, but you can't. Like there's something in the way, you don't really know what it is, and you're just like, why can't I do this? It feels frustrating, right? And so in this video, I want to go over 3 methods corresponding to the 3 types of procrastination that I learned from a psychiatrist. Some of you might know him. He goes by Dr.k or HealthyGamerGG. I'm making this video in hopes that it will help kickstart your journey into really understanding what procrastination is and how to basically get rid of it. All right, let's get started. So before we start the video, I want to address a common misconception that most people have, that I definitely had back then when I was a student and looking into this stuff. This misconception is that procrastination is a bad thing. Procrastination is not a bad thing. If you imagine it as a kid, right, it shouldn't be someone that you just ignore and try to like shove into the closet, hope it never comes out again. It should be something that you try to understand, because whenever you procrastinate, it's your body telling you that something is wrong, that there's a reason why you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I think it's extremely valuable to understand what is causing that, so you can understand how to best address it. Because a lot of the advice that's given out there on the internet is for just procrastination in general. And there's not just one type of procrastination. There's a bunch of different types. There's a bunch of different reasons why you don't want to do something. So let's jump in. There's 3 reasons. The first one is idealistic procrastination. Now, this is just a fancy way of saying you are afraid to start something because it, quote unquote, won't be perfect. You have this idealistic fantasy that the thing that you want to achieve is going to look out this way, it's going to be great, you envision it a certain way, and you're like, man, that's what I want, I don't know if I can get there. And so that's the friction that's associated with this type of procrastination. So an example of this is writing a report, or for me, writing documentation at work. I'm like, oh, I want it to be this way, and I want it to look like this and have these sections. And after a while, I realized, and this is the solution, by the way, that no one is really gonna care that much, that we are usually our own harshest critics, and it's better to just write shit. I guess you could call that like a hack, is you just accept that it's okay to do something, not have it be perfect, because you can iterate on it over time and change it. So that's how you beat this type of procrastination. You accept that it won't be perfect, and you just start doing the thing with that acceptance. The second type of procrastination is called avoidance procrastination. And this is just a fancy way of saying there is significant emotional friction towards whatever it is that you want to do. And it's called avoidance procrastination because you're avoiding the task because of your emotions. Now, this is a really complicated type of procrastination. As you can imagine, there's a lot of emotions. But have you ever wanted to do something and something stops you? You're like, I want to do this, but I really don't feel like doing it. But at the same time, I want to do it, and I can't come up with a logical reason for why I don't want to do this thing. Like what is it? Most likely it's avoidance procrastination. And the most common emotion, at least the one that I felt in my years of playing around with this, is fear. And the reason why fear is so common, my hot take on this, is that we were conditioned to feel fear and to use fear as a motivational source from school. Like if you think about how the school system works, it's like, okay, you need to study for this test in order to get these good grades, because if you don't get these good grades, you are going to fail. If you are going to fail, then you are not going to be able to get a job. Your parents may or may not disown you. You will probably die out on the street. Like it just leads to death. And so it's like, okay, well, I need to do this thing because I fear dying, essentially, right? It's a very, I don't want to say toxic, but it's a very negative way to motivate yourself. And it wasn't until I read this book, this book on self-compassion. It's called The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself, Self-Compassion by Christian Neff. If you Google self-compassion, it will come up. It wasn't until I read that book that I realized that there's a different type of motivation that's a lot more sustainable and scalable. And that type of motivation is called love-based motivation. And so there's fear-based motivation and love-based motivation. And it's interesting because one is limited. You can only instill so much fear in someone before they just break. Like some people do break during university. But love-based motivation is limitless. And so you might be asking to yourself, what does that look like? Like, what does love-based motivation look like? Well, I'm great you asked. Here are some examples, taking the common test university school example. So instead of telling yourself, you gotta study for this test or else you'll fail and die and you don't want to be a piece of shit, you talk to yourself like you would do a friend, right? So you say, hey, you took this course because you really wanted to learn this subject and you were interested in it. So let's put our head down and learn this because that is why I'm here. That is why I'm here to take the course. I want to learn this stuff. So that's one way. Another way is if you just don't like the studying aspect of it, you can say, hey, let's make studying fun. Like for me personally, what I did in school was I found an empty classroom and I went to the front. I pretended like I was a teacher. This is like hyper specific to me, so I don't know if you can apply this in your own life. But I went to the front, pretended like I was a teacher, and I opened my notes and I just read my notes out loud and pretended like I was teaching a class. It sounds weird. Like one time this guy like walked in and he was like, and then he just like walked the fuck out because I was the only one in there and I was basically talking to myself. But I wanted to make studying fun. So I was like, okay, studying is boring. Like me sitting down and reading this is boring, right? Let's make this fun. And then we can get ice cream afterwards because it's like you're saying you care about yourself and you're like, okay, if this isn't working, then let's do this instead. Let's try this instead. Another example of a love-based motivation approach is telling yourself, hey, I don't like this course, but I'm going to try my best to understand this stuff and ace this test because that's just who I am. I'm a person who commits. I'm a person who is going to try to understand something when I don't understand something. And I'm going to ace this test, even though I hate this course. And the last example that I leave you with is around goals. And I think this is the most concrete way to explain this because love-based motivation is not something that is very easily explainable. So a goal-oriented motivational approach is you find a goal where the suffering is worth it. So in the case of school, it's your degree. There's this value that is placed on degrees that says, hey, if we get this degree, then we are going to be able to get a job, make money, and be an adult. And so what you tell yourself instead of, hey, I gotta pass this test or I'm gonna fail and feel like ass, is you say, listen, I really care about you and I really care about your future. I want you to get a job. I want you to have a good life. So we gotta get through this test. We gotta get through the tough times. We gotta pass this test, pass these courses, and then we'll be done. Okay, let's get this out of the way so that we can get one step closer to this degree and to this better life. So you can see how that is more of a compassionate approach and the goals is more concrete because if you find something that is really worth fighting for, it makes all the suffering worth it. It makes all the shit you have to go through worth it. If you can look at it from that mindset and perspective, it's a lot more healthier than instilling all this fear into you. Because I don't know if you're in school or if you're out of school, but I'm currently out of school and I have to unlearn all this stuff because I realized after leaving university that this way to motivate yourself is not scalable. It's not sustainable. You just eventually feel like shit because you're just instilled with so much fear and so much pressure that you put on yourself. So I kind of went off tangent there, but just to recap, avoidance procrastination. Where's the sticky here? Avoidance procrastination is when you avoid doing things because you're afraid of the emotions that come with it or the emotions stop you. It's the emotional friction. And the most common emotion, in my experience, is fear. So instead of fear-based motivation, try love-based motivation instead. A word of caution that this is not something that happens overnight. This takes a long time to get used to, but if you start now, I promise you, you will thank yourself in the future, even when you're out of school. And the most concrete way to do love-based motivation is goals. You have something that you really want and you think about why you want that from a place of love for yourself, like you're speaking to your friend or if you're parenting yourself, instead of instilling yourself with fear and trying to motivate yourself that way. And on to the third and last type of procrastination, we have operational procrastination. This is the easiest procrastination to understand and the easiest procrastination to beat in terms of a solution. So operational procrastination is basically you don't know the next step. You don't know how to operationalize. So there's a big task that is abstract, that is vague, that you don't know how to start it. An example from my personal life is do taxes. A couple of years ago, I had a to-do list and on it was do taxes. And I kept on moving this to do week after week after week after week. And when I looked at it, The reason why is because this was a massive task. In my head, I was like, oh, it's simple. Just like write down one to do and it'll be fine. But it's a massive task. Like if you break it down, there's like 6 or 7 steps. I'll throw a screenshot on the screen here to show you. But when I broke it down, the first step, log on to the website. And the second step, create like a tax report. Like once I broke it down into those steps, it was just so fast. Like you just do it. You're like, oh, this is actually so much easier than what I originally thought it was. So if you deal with this type of procrastination, just break it down. Break it down into steps. You can start at the end if you want. Like, okay, I have to do my taxes. What does that mean? That means I have to submit a report. I have to fill it out. I have to like create one. I have to log into the website. You can start from the end if that helps, but just break it down so that you know what the next step is and be really clear about it. And a pro tip for this, if you want to get better at writing to-dos, is make sure your to-dos are clearly written. Like that's how you avoid this type of procrastination. If you have any sort of to-do list, is your to-dos need to be written away where they're broken down and they're clear. Like when you read them, you're like, I know what I need to do. You can picture it. So those are the 3 types of procrastination. I'll link the video, the Dr. K video, down in the description below if you want to check it out. But I wanted to make this video kind of as a summary and kind of as a me adding my own spice onto these concepts because I found this video so useful. I referred back to it and I linked it to multiple people when I was in school and I was studying. And I'll end this video off with a quote that will make you think because it made me think a lot when I realized it. Let me just pull it up here. Procrastination is just an unplanned break. Be intentional with your time and you'll never procrastinate. That's it for this video. I hope you learned something. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Peace.